Well, everybody. Hello again. Welcome back to Pop Apologists. Today we are entering the third part of our deep dive on Maureen Callahan's book, Ask Not. And today we're going to be focusing on some of the stories that are lesser known. Some of the women who, have sort of not taken up as much space in history, sadly, but whose stories nonetheless deserve to be told.
Yeah, as I was listening to the book and then also reading through research for the episode, I have to say I was much more riveted by these stories than I was of the Carolyn Bessette stories and even the Jackie Kennedy story, only because I felt like I knew a lot of that before, and I was just more familiar with both of them as women. And so to find out about all of these additional women whose lives were completely overturned or ruined by the Kennedy men or men adjacent to that family or very close to that family, it was very gripping, especially because some of these stories are essentially right out of a horror tale.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the stories with Jackie and Carolyn kind of focus on bad relationships and infidelity.
Bad behavior.
What we're going to get into today are like crimes.
Yeah, criminal behavior.
Criminal behavior and the ways that Kennedy men were just able to completely circumvent the system. Allegedly. And consequences. Allegedly.
This is all very much alleged / based on Maureen Callahan's book, Ask Not, as we have said. So just want to make that clear from the beginning. Daughters of attorneys, I think we should have that legal disclaimer right at the start.
I think we could potentially rename our whole podcast to Allegedly. And it would just, you and I would sleep a lot easier at night.
We absolutely would. We might need a few less early birds.
Yeah, absolutely. Pop Allegedly? Something like that. Okay, so where do you want to begin? Which story would you want to start with?
Let's start with Mary Jo Kopechne.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So Mary Jo Kopechne was born on July 26, 1940 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. She was the only child of Joe and Gwen Kopechne. So Mary Jo was raised a very devout Roman Catholic, and her family was this Roman Catholic family from New Jersey, and she was the first person in her family to graduate from college. She was extremely religious, and she lived her life guided by a strong moral compass. Friends said she did not smoke, she rarely drank, and she believed deeply in saving sex for marriage. I think that's important to note, given the end of this story.
Mary Jo was raised in this very conservative home, but she was also really ambitious, and she wanted to have a career of her own. She cared about civil rights, poverty, inequality, and marginalized communities, and so she wanted to be involved in government, and she really wanted to work for the Kennedys, and specifically she wanted to work for JFK. But because Washington has its own hierarchy of getting jobs and social circles, social chains, she didn't really come from the Ivy League background that a lot of JFK's staffers came from, and so she didn't get that job. She didn't have the family name or the boarding school type of polish. So she had to find another way into that circle. And she did so by working for Senator George Smathers. If you'll remember, George Smathers was I don't know if he was an aide or friend, probably both, to JFK. And he was the one who told JFK when they were on, that cruise around the Mediterranean partying with women, he's the one who said to JFK, you need to get back to your wife or you'll never be president.
Yeah.
You need to go be there, be a good husband right now. I don't know if he actually was coming from that pure of a place, but yeah. Anyway,
or he could have just been coming from a place of this looks really bad for you to be partying on a boat. Even if some people know about it, rumors can spread in Washington. And you need to be back with your wife who just lost your child.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably more likely. So anyway, she started working for George Smathers in 1963 because he was very connected to JFK, and she wanted to work for the Kennedys.
So then in November 1963, President John F. Kennedy is assassinated. Mary Jo was heartbroken, but instead of pulling away from the family, she became even more attached to the Kennedys. In 1964, she persuaded George Smathers to let her go work for Bobby Kennedy. So Bobby Kennedy, everyone, is Robert F. Kennedy, so RFK Jr.'s dad.
These names get very confusing for me.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I was afraid to say it because I feel kind of stupid. But the names get so confusing because they call JFK Jr., also John F. Kennedy Jr. They call JFK both John and Jack.
Yes.
And then there's Bob and Bobby.
But no, it's just Bobby.
Bobby.
But he is called maybe by both.
Yes, and then there's another.
And there's Robert.
Then there's Robert, who is the same. Wait,
well, no, there's like
now we're confusing our
There's
listeners.
RFK
is Robert Kennedy.
is Robert Kennedy.
Same as That's Bobby Kennedy, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Robert Kennedy.
I think so. Yeah, there was not another brother named Robert. Yes. Bobby. Everybody, anyone listening to this who probably like lived in the generation above us is dying inside, and we apologize, but we're going to do our best. I did have to look up a family tree while researching
Yes,
this.
it's a little bit confusing.
We should probably, maybe we can pop one of those up on the screen for a moment so you can kind of get your bearings. But I think for me, I try to always go back to like, okay, who are the original, sons of Joe Kennedy, Joe and Rose Kennedy? Who were the sons? Like, that's where it all kind of begins.
Rose had 9 children.
Yes.
And really, these are all the siblings.
Yes,
that we're
these
discussing.
are all the siblings. Oh,
the
man,
brothers.
There's just so much.
Okay, so anyway.
Okay, so yeah. Back to Bobby Kennedy, who is the brother of JFK.
Yes, who was RFK Jr., ran for president, works out in Denham, that guy.
Yes. I am currently looking at the family tree in my hands, and I am still sort of confused, and I feel like I need to maybe like make flashcards for myself.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are going to do our very best to keep the name straight.
Yes.
But anyway, back to Mary Jo.
Okay, so back to Mary Jo. After the assassination, she's devastated, and she convinces George Smathers to go let her work for RFK. RFK's dad, also known as Bobby Kennedy. So we're going to call him Bobby Kennedy from here on out.
Please only call him Bobby Kennedy from here on out, please.
I'm not going to refer to him as RFK Jr.'s dad this whole time.
RFK Sr. or something. Like, it's just...
Okay. So Bobby was very different from Mary Jo. She admired JFK, but Bobby was the one she believed in. He cared about the things she cared about, and Mary Jo reportedly referred to Bobby as, quote, the answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think that... I didn't know either of these men, but I get the sense that...
You didn't know these men.
I get the sense from even Jackie's relationship with Bobby that Bobby was just maybe a little bit more emotionally intelligent, or just Bobby was maybe a slightly better guy.
Yeah.
It's like hard to even say that, but like JFK was JFK and Bobby was just like maybe a touch better in the soul, if I can be so candid. Anyway,
You absolutely can.
once Mary Jo joins Bobby's staff, it was like her dream job.
Yeah.
She started as a secretary and then worked her way up, staging campaign stops, and she became like a speech writing aide. During his 1968 presidential campaign, she became one of the 6 women known as the Boiler Room Girls. This is kind of important for the story, so just keep that in mind. But she worked in this like cramped, windowless room, tracking delegates, gathering information, making calls, compiling data, and just like doing a ton of the invisible work and labor that really makes a campaign run and function.
Yeah. So a hallmark of these times was women doing work for basically half the price as men would do it for. So Mary Jo worked nights and weekends for $7,500 a year, while men doing similar work made twice as much. But she was noticed. She was smart, loyal, funny, and truly useful to Bobby's campaign. Her nickname was Twiggy, after the British model, because she was thin and pretty, but Mary Jo was not just a pretty face. She was smart, and she was excellent at her job.
There's a story that Bobby Kennedy gave her as a gift one time, a photo of herself working at her desk. And I wrote on the back, when he gave it to her, he said, "This is how I always see you, because you're always working so hard."
Wow.
Because you couldn't see her face. It was just like her kind of like, dutifully working. And anyway, that was like something that she treasured. So as Bobby's campaign gains momentum, rumors do circulate that him and Mary Jo are having an affair. They traveled a lot together for the campaign. They stayed at the same hotels. There is no public proof that their relationship was anything but professional, but I do think it is very clear that Mary Jo deeply loved Bobby Kennedy. We don't know the nature of their relationship exactly, but I guess one boyfriend reportedly told Mary Jo's father that she would never marry him because she was, quote, married to the Kennedys.
Well, I mean, imagine if you or I had gone to work for Obama when we were 21 or whatever. I think that we kind of would have been, like, even if...
Present day.
Present. I mean, you can understand how someone could become so wrapped up in, like, working for a very, like, not only... I guess it's not a perfect analogy because Obama didn't have, like, the Kennedy name and this whole,
like, American royalty.
Yeah. This whole empire around him, but imagine working within the Kennedys at the height of their power and also believing in the figure that you're working for politically. You can understand how you would get caught up in that.
Absolutely. Also, regardless of everyone's political affiliations listening to this right now, there was something very striking about the Hope and Change posters from 2008. And I was
still stirred.
I was very swept up in it. And then if you think about Mary Jo and you think about, okay, this is 1968. Like lots of things are happening in the country. And like it would be very easy to see yourself getting caught up and, you know, just fully devoting your life to these like important like causes. But things changed suddenly on June 5th, 1968. Mary Jo was at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles the night Bobby Kennedy won the California Democratic primary. The country, you know, was very much so in crisis during this time. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated 2 months earlier. The Vietnam War was dividing the country, and Lyndon Johnson had just announced that he would not seek another term. And so Bobby really looked like a lot of hope for his supporters. But after his victory speech, Bobby walked through the hotel pantry. He was surrounded by aides, reporters, hotel staff, everybody. And suddenly there were gunshots. Bobby Kennedy fell to the floor and sadly died the next day from his injuries, including a fatal gunshot wound to the head.
So for Mary Jo, Bobby's death was absolutely gut-wrenching and devastating. She had already mourned JFK, and now she had lost the Kennedy that she had actually worked for and whose campaign had become her life. Following his death, she helped pack up his office, a task that took months. And when the work was finished, Mary Jo left Washington. She said she could feel Bobby's presence everywhere and could not go back because it would never be the same. So just over a year later, after she's left Washington, there was a Washington reunion of sorts on Chappaquiddick Island off the east coast of Martha's Vineyard. On July 18th, 1969, a small group gathered at a rented cottage to honor the Boiler Room girls who were all at the party. There were reportedly 12 people there. Ted Kennedy, 5 other men, and the 6 Boiler Room girls.
So we've really only been talking about Bobby and JFK, but now we're going to talk about Ted Kennedy, who's another central person in this story besides Mary Jo. And after Bobby was assassinated, he kind of assumed the political mantle in the Kennedy family. So the 6 Boiler Room girls were there, as well as 5 other married men. One of those included Ted Kennedy. The Boiler Room girls never worked for Ted. He was now seen as, like the surviving Kennedy brother carrying the family's political future. He was a United States senator from Massachusetts, and he'd just recently been elected like the majority whip. I don't totally know what that means.
The majority whip is the person who's supposed to get all of the people in the majority party like whipped up to vote in the same way, I believe.
I mean, whipped up?
Whipped up.
Yeah, like to kind of build consensus. Love it. So basically, he was, carrying this mantle forward, and he was already being talked about as a frontrunner for the 1972 Democratic nomination. Ted was married to Joan. She was pregnant at the time of this Chappaquiddick party. The party itself was not some big swanky affair. It kind of was like a sad political alumni reunion weekend, and
yeah, it wasn't glitzy and glamorous. It wasn't a Hyannisport weekend. It was them in a cramped cottage drinking.
Yeah. And like
a group of 12, 6 guys and the 6 Boiler Room girls.
Yeah. And Mary Jo almost didn't go. She had like a work obligation somewhere else that weekend, but somebody offered to cover for her. And so she decided to go. Before she left, she called her mother, Gwen, with some exciting news. She had been offered a job at Matt Reese Associates, which was one of the top political consulting firms in the country. And so she was going to get like a huge raise. And according to Maureen Callahan, Mary Jo had wanted to tell her mother something else on that call, but then her father joined the conversation, and Mary Jo didn't end up, sharing this other news, and her parents never heard the second piece of news. And I think this is like reported on because like she was maybe going to tell her mother that she was engaged or thinking of getting engaged.
Oh, was there a guy?
There was a guy in the picture.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like after the assassination, she took a step back, but like her life was like resuming momentum again.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, that's an important detail here.
Yeah, I think what's also important to note is that Mary Jo just seems by all accounts to have been a really fantastic young woman, right? She was from a family she was from like a normal middle class family. She wasn't from some like super moneyed family.
Yeah.
She wasn't super posh. She was very religious and devout. She was very studious. She was very, led by her principles.
Yeah.
And so, when we talk about what happened to her, a lot of the story is in what we're about to share next, but it's important for the person not to get lost. And she was, by all accounts, just a really magnanimous young person.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Can I be honest? Sometimes people say they want to start therapy, but it never quite happens. Between busy schedules, social fears, and not knowing where to begin, it just stays on the to-do list. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of Americans believe getting support is wise, yet 74% say society discourages people from doing so. BetterHelp bridges that gap by making quality therapy more approachable. With over 30,000 licensed therapists, they handle the matching process for you through a short questionnaire so you can focus on your goals. If the fit is not right, you can switch to someone new at any time. They have supported over 6 million people globally with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 from more than 1.7 million client reviews. Don't let stigma stand in the way of support. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/popapologists. That's betterhelp.com/popapologists.
This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. It is so helpful when a simple moment can transport your mind somewhere else entirely. The other day, Ben and I were watching a show about climbing, and it was all set in Yosemite. Yosemite is one of my favorite places in the world, and Ben has never been. All I could think about was how I needed to show him this incredible place in California. Booking.com makes the shift from daydream to real plans surprisingly easy. I started searching for hotels, and the options were so clear and organized. What really impressed me was how fast the whole thing came together. In just a few minutes, I was able to compare stays, see real photos and reviews, and book exactly what I was looking for. What makes Booking.com stand out is how it removes the friction from travel planning. Whether it's a spontaneous camping trip or a well-deserved tropical getaway, they help turn that I wish I was there feeling into something real and achievable. Go on, book that trip. It is easy. Booking.com, booking.yeah.
So on that fateful night of the party that she almost didn't attend, sometime after 11 p.m., Ted Kennedy left the party with Mary Jo Kopechne in his black Oldsmobile. And from that moment on, what happened is one of the most infamous stories in American political history. Ted later said, by his account, that Mary Jo wanted to leave and asked him to drive her back to her hotel in Edgartown. To get there, they would need to take the ferry from Chappaquiddick back to Martha's Vineyard. Ted said he agreed to drive her, despite having an expired driver's license and, according to Maureen Callahan, having been drinking heavily that night. People reported that they could still smell alcohol on his breath the next morning.
So there were some holes in this story from Ted. Mary Jo left her purse and her hotel room key at the cottage, so she didn't take all of her things with her when they departed in his car. Her friends, later questioned why she did that if she was really planning on leaving for the night. There was also an issue with the ferry aspect of this. So the ferry actually stopped running at midnight, and Ted said that they left the party around 11:15. And the local deputy sheriff later said that around 12:45 a.m. he saw a dark car near the road that seemed unsure or lost. When he got out to offer help, the car sped off toward Dyke Road, which was the opposite direction of the ferry. Ted claimed he was later unfamiliar with the area in the dark. So I think basically what they're saying
is like they were out after the last ferry had left.
Yeah, and so I guess like this deputy sheriff said that he thought that was maybe Ted's car that he had seen very late.
Right. And
later than when the ferry was running.
And if you're drunk driving, maybe it makes sense that you're going to speed off in a different direction from a police officer.
Yeah.
I think also, you don't leave a party that you're planning on, departing for the rest of the night and you're staying in a hotel room, just leave your purse with your hotel room key.
Yeah.
I've been plenty tipsy in my time. I've never left my bag anywhere.
Yeah.
When I go home for the evening. So
I think we'll get into some other theories about the reason for them leaving or how they ended up together.
Mm-hmm.
But just so what follows after they leave the party is that Ted drove down Dyke Road, approached the narrow bridge over Pucha Pond, missed the bridge ramp, and drove off the side. The car plunged into the water and landed upside down. Ted Kennedy escaped, and Mary Jo Kopechne did not.
Yeah, so that's basically the brass tacks of what we factually know happened. He drove down that road, and he approached a narrow bridge over what was called Pucha Pond. He missed the bridge ramp, and he drives off the side. And he escapes from the car, but Mary Jo does not. So It's extremely tragic, but Mary Jo dies that night. And it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy. At the inquest months later, Ted described the crash in dramatic detail. He said he remembered movement from Mary Jo beside him, maybe hitting or kicking him. He said he opened his eyes and realized they were upside down, that water was rushing in, and that it was pitch black. He said he managed to get a small gulp of air before the car filled with water. He said he thought he was going to drown, and then somehow he got out. So he later says that he dove repeatedly trying to rescue Mary Jo, but could not reach her. And he said that he was just exhausted, injured, disoriented, and in shock.
Yeah. So I think what happens after this is really where, you know, like when I first heard about the story years ago, because I think we watched the movie Chappaquiddick when I went to Martha's Vineyard a couple years ago, just because we were like, had this like morbid fascination with it. And, the details you're about to hear are where, like, you do not understand this person. And you do not understand, like, the frame of mind that somebody was in where they did not go for help. So he gets out of the water, and he does not go to, you know, the nearest house for help, even though he passed a house that had its lights on. He did not call the police from a payphone. He did not even stop at the fire station that he passed on his way back to the cottage. So he goes back to the rented cottage, and he asks for like two men, his cousin, Joe Gargan, and Paul Markham, a former U.S. attorney and one of the Kennedy advisors. So he goes back and gets his people. Yeah. So he tells them that there's been a terrible accident and that the car had gone off the bridge and that Mary Jo was still inside. But still, nobody makes a call to the police. The three men together return to the crash site. Gargan and Markham tried to dive down and rescue Mary Jo, but they were not trained rescue divers and they could not get her out.
Right. So after this, Ted still does not call the police. Instead, he left Chappaquiddick. He went to the ferry landing and swam across the channel back to Edgartown, about a mile away. He swims a mile, which is nuts, and then returned to his room at the Shiretown Inn. Around 2:25 in the morning, he comes out of his room and spoke to the innkeeper, Russell Peachy. Ted said he had been awakened by noise from a nearby room and asked what time it was. Critics later said that Ted was trying to establish that he had been in his hotel room at the time. Ted would later say that his behavior during those hours would make no sense even to him. So he was trying to establish an alibi, according to his critics.
Yeah. Also, you know, the police are still not notified. They're not looped in. These two men who now know about this, like this woman who's trapped, they do not go to the police. And Ted proceeds to make 17 long-distance phone calls from his hotel room. He calls members of his staff. He calls his family, his friends, his advisors, and his lawyers. The police are still not called in any of these, 17 long-distance phone calls.
It almost sounds like he's calling fixers rather than trying to save her.
He does, and one of those people was like the Kennedy family fixer.
Yeah. So all the while, Mary Jo was still trapped in the car. Her body was recovered the next morning by rescue diver John Farrar. Farrar later said he believed Mary Jo had not drowned immediately. So this is just really gruesome. But I think it's a very important note. So he believed that she had survived for a period of time, possibly up to an hour, by breathing from an air pocket inside the car, and that she eventually suffocated when the oxygen ran out. And this is really the center of the story of what happened at Chappaquiddick and what happened to Mary Jo Kopechne, because it wasn't just an accident and it was not just a tragic death.
No.
The horror escalates when you realize that if Ted Kennedy had left the scene immediately and gone for help, there was potentially still time to save Mary Jo Kopechne.
Yeah. So it wasn't until 9:45 a.m. on July 19th that Ted finally reported the accident to the Edgartown police chief, Dominic Arena, and he admitted that he had been the driver of the car.
Right.
Then Ted calls the Kopechne home. So Mary Jo's mother, Gwen, answers, and Ted asked to speak to her husband. But her husband, Joe, was not home. And Gwen just immediately knew that something was not right, because it's not normal for Ted Kennedy to be calling their house, first thing on a Saturday morning to say hello. So Gwen really had to pull it out of him. He did not just come right out and say it. Ted had told her that, Mary Jo had been in an accident. Gwen asked if it was a car accident. He told her that, it was a car accident that was happening, when they were trying to get back to the ferry, but he would not say what had happened plainly. And I just can't imagine how painful that would be to be like searching for answers as you are melting down inside, trying to understand what's gone wrong. She finally has to directly ask Ted if Mary Jo was dead, and then only then did Ted say yes. Gwen later remembered screaming that Mary Jo had been killed and that she was alone. Mary Jo was her only child. It's just...
Yeah, it's beyond words. It's beyond words.
Also, Mary Jo's parents were not given the full picture.
Of what happened.
Of what happened. They did not know all the details of the crash. They didn't know the timeline, and they didn't even know about the failed rescue attempts, the delay, the calls, or the questions that were already kind of forming around Ted's account. I feel like I remember reading that Ted would always tell them, like, I'm going to tell you everything that happened, and he just kind of dangled that, but he never really did.
Yeah.
Never gave them that closure of knowing everything.
Yeah, and you really wonder why he couldn't give them the full picture of what happened. And I think we probably all instinctively know why.
Another thing I just remembered, one of the people he called was like his mistress.
Because really?
I think this was mentioned in the Joan part, but yeah, one of the 17 calls was to like, tell his mistress about what was going on and just...
Yeah, so I think the idea that one theory, and why would he call his mistress, right? To get ahead of the story.
Or to just like, this is what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mary Jo is still in the water.
Yeah. So a theory could be that, I don't know, he took her on a drive to maybe try to come onto her.
Yeah.
Who really knows what happened in that car? But it's highly unlikely, in my opinion, that he was driving her to the ferry.
Yeah. One other theory that I guess some of her friends said is that she might have actually like crawled into the car to take a nap. And then he forgot that he didn't realize that she was in the car until like she woke up or something, until like they were driving. I don't know. But that's what her friend said, that that's what maybe why she didn't have her keys or her purse.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, that would be that would be something that could potentially exonerate him. And so I think the idea that like he would
say, I didn't realize she was in the car.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That just would be such an easy story to tell. You would just tell the facts,
right, Right.
You'd call the police immediately if that was the case. So anyway, almost immediately the story becomes less about Mary Jo Kopechne and more about Ted Kennedy's future. Also, all of this happened during the Apollo 11 moon landing weekend, so the entire news cycle was very much consumed with the moon landing, and that meant that exposure was really minimized about this tragedy, the death of Mary Jo, and, Ted Kennedy's involvement.
On July 22nd, 1969, Mary Jo Kopechne was buried in Plymouth, Pennsylvania. Ted Kennedy does attend the funeral with his wife, Joan, and Bobby's widow, Ethel. Ted wore a neck brace, apparently, though, that he really didn't even need.
Which sounds like, he wanted to be seen as a co-victim.
Yes, right. And then 3 days later, on July 25th, Ted pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident after causing personal injury. He received a 2-month suspended sentence, and his driver's license was suspended.
So a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
The same night, Ted delivered a nationally televised address from the Kennedy compound. He called his failure to report the accident immediately indefensible. He denied any immoral conduct between himself and Mary Jo. He said he'd been overcome by grief, fear, doubt, exhaustion, panic, confusion, and shock. He also said that some of his thoughts had been irrational, including whether some awful curse hung over the Kennedys.
On Chappaquiddick Island, off Martha's Vineyard, I attended on Friday evening, July 18th, a cookout I had encouraged and helped sponsor for a devoted group of Kennedy campaign secretaries. When I left the party around 11:15 p.m., I was accompanied by one of these girls, Miss Mary Jo Kopechne. Mary Jo was one of the most devoted members of the staff of Senator Robert Kennedy. She worked for him for 4 years and was broken up over his death. For this reason, and because she was such a gentle, kind, and idealistic person, all of us tried to help her feel that she still had a home with the Kennedy family. There is no truth whatever, to the widely circulated suspicions of immoral conduct that have been leveled at my behavior and hers regarding that evening. There has never been a private relationship between us of any kind. I know of nothing in Mary Jo's conduct on that or any other occasion. And the same is true of the other girls at that party that would lend any substance to such ugly speculation about their character. Nor was I driving under the influence of liquor. A little over 1 mile away, the car that I was driving on an unlit road went off a narrow bridge, which had no guardrails and was built on a left angle to the road. My conduct and conversations during the next several hours, to the extent that I can remember them, make no sense to me at all. Although my doctors informed me that I suffered a cerebral concussion as well as shock, I do not seek to escape responsibility for my actions by placing the blame either on the physical and emotional trauma brought on by the accident or on anyone else. I regard as indefensible the fact that I did not report the accident to the police immediately. Instead of looking directly for a telephone after lying exhausted in the grass for an undetermined time, I walked back to the cottage where the party was being held and requested the help of two friends, my cousin Joseph Gargan and Paul Markham, and directed them to return immediately to the scene with me. This was sometime after midnight, in order to undertake a new effort to dive down and locate Miss Kopechne. Their strenuous efforts, undertaken at some risk to their own lives, also proved futile. All kinds of scrambled thoughts, all of them confused, some of them irrational, many of them which I cannot recall, and some of which I would not have seriously entertained under normal circumstances, went through my mind during this period. They were reflected in the various inexplicable, inconsistent, and inconclusive things I said and did, including such questions as whether the girl might still be alive somewhere out of that immediate area, whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys, whether there was some justifiable reason for me to doubt what had happened and to delay my report, whether somehow the awful weight of this incredible incident might in some way pass from my shoulders. I was overcome, I'm frank to say, by a jumble of emotions: grief, fear, doubt, exhaustion, panic, confusion, and shock. Instructing Gargan and Markham not to alarm Mary Jo's friends that night,
This one's for all my TV lovers. My Entertainment from DirecTV gets you 60-plus channels and Disney+, Hulu, and HBO Max, all in one pack.
But here's the thing. With so much great TV in My Entertainment, you're going to want to talk about everything you've been watching.
Just remember that your friends might not be as well watched as you.
Don't be a spoiler and encourage them to get My Entertainment for just $34.99 a month.
Go to directv.com/genre packs and sign up today.
New customers only. Service renews monthly unless canceled. Credit card required. Conditions apply to apps. HBO Max Basic with ads begins after DirecTV 5-day trial. Learn more at directv.com. Restrictions apply.
Summer has a way of reminding us how important comfort really is, especially when you are home and sleeping. Cozy Earth thoughtfully addresses this with their bamboo sheet set, made from viscose from bamboo, which offers a cool and smooth feel that helps regulate temperature for comfortable nights. I am obsessed with my bamboo sheet set. They are the only sheets I sleep with. I have several sets just so that I never have to go a night without them. Also, I want to talk about the Everywhere Pant and Everyday Polo. These items are that perfect, refined, but ridiculously comfortable combo. They're lightweight, breathable, and just the right amount of stretch. They look polished enough for work or dinner. One customer loved them so much, he bought 3 pairs. That's how good they are. Cozy Earth stands behind their products with a 100-night sleep trial on the sheets and a lifetime warranty on the clothing, so you can try them with complete confidence. Summer should feel easy for everyone in the house. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheet set, Everywhere Pant, and Everyday Polo are designed to keep you cool, comfortable, and actually relaxed all summer long. Head to CozyEarth.com and use our code POP for an exclusive 20% off. That's code POP for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here.
I think what I really struggle with is, let's say that's all true, right? And he had repeatedly dived and tried to save her. I just think he would immediately seek help, right? And I guess he when he was leaving the scene, did I read this, that there were houses with lights on? And he could have easily just like knocked on the door, tried to get more help.
If you're in this exhausted state of panic and shock, why are you able to go?
No,
back to
your
your
adrenaline
hotel?
kicks in so hard. The last thing you are is tired at this moment.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, even if you're in panic and shock and you can't dive down there anymore, why do you have the wherewithal to then swim back to your hotel, complain about noise,
to
make phone calls to your family,
to all your fixers, and wait 10 hours to call the police? For me, there's only one reason why, and that's you're trying to cover up what you did.
Yes.
And you're afraid of what the police will find.
And you don't care.
That would be the most horrific reality of all of them.
I just also have to say, like, she didn't die immediately. So it's like there was time to try to save the situation. That wasn't like, it's not like he meant to drive off the bridge.
Right.
So there was time to try to like get help with this accident. But then it went from an accident to a crime.
Yeah.
When he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So there was no autopsy performed on Mary Jo. By the time officials sought one, her body had already been taken to Pennsylvania for burial, and Mary Jo's parents strongly opposed disturbing their daughter's grave. As a result, some medical questions were never fully resolved. The official determination was drowning, but John Farrar, the diver, believed she suffocated after breathing from an air pocket. But because there was no autopsy, the exact medical details remained disputed.
So I think just in summation, Mary Jo Kopechne was reduced in the media and in the headlines as kind of the girl in the car who drowned. But her parents really fought heavily against that, and they wanted for her to have some identity as someone other than the girl who died in Ted Kennedy's car.
Yeah.
And although she is remembered primarily in the public imagination as the woman who died that night in Chappaquiddick, by all accounts, she was a really accomplished 28-year-old woman who had spent her life working in politics, working to make the world a better place. And she shouldn't be reduced to a footnote in the Kennedy family history.
Yeah, and I think there was just so much speculation about the nature of the relationship or what was happening that night, what was taking place,
her
about to
character.
take place, her character, her, just all sorts of things were like projected onto her.
You have to imagine the tragedy as a mother and as a father when you have this daughter who not only passes away, but then all of a sudden becomes, she becomes
like
some sort of
cheapened in this way.
Yeah. She reduced to maybe potentially someone a political figure was having an affair with in the eyes of the public or in the media.
Yeah. One more detail here. Ted Kennedy's auto insurance paid the family a sum of $140,000. And according to their lawyer, that was the total amount they received, or directly or indirectly from any Kennedys. They didn't receive any more money than that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's now talk about Martha Moxley. So the Astronaut chapter on Martha Moxley might be one of the most shocking of all because it truly does read like a horror movie.
Yeah.
The Martha Moxley case is not technically a Kennedy family case, but it is an extension because it involves the nephews of Bobby Kennedy's wife, Ethel, who was born Ethel Skakel. The Skakels were her family and the teenage boys, Michael and Thomas Skakel, who became central to the Martha Moxley investigation, were not Kennedys by name, but they were connected to the family socially, culturally, and eventually publicly.
So they lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a community called Bellhaven, and this was just a super nice, upscale neighborhood. It was gated. This was like, Greenwich is still this way, but a lot of people work in the city and then, live in these like commuter towns, and Greenwich was one of like the, one of the nicest ones, if not the nicest. And the Skakel family was incredibly wealthy. So there were 7 children. And they were all being raised by their dad because their mother had recently passed away due to cancer. But getting back to Martha, the main person in this story. So her family had recently moved from California to Greenwich. And she'd immediately found friends and popularity in her community. She was really well liked. And she wrote a lot about her life and her thoughts in her diary, specifically about the boys in the neighborhood and the boys in her school. And there are just like very crazy, alarming parts of this that, that were maybe common of the time, but now reading them in like our current lens is just like horrifying. At times boys would push her into rooms with the lights off and sexually assault her. But like the way she puts it is that it was just kind of like a nuisance and, you know, it wasn't super traumatic to her. And it was just like a part of being like a well-liked girl at the time.
Yeah.
And one boy that she could not stand was Michael Skakel. And she characterized him as obnoxious, creepy, mean, and always hovering around.
Yeah, so on September 17th, she wrote this in her diary. She said Michael was totally out of it, that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. He kept telling me I was leading Tom on when I don't like him, except as a friend.
Really quick side note, Tom is Michael's brother.
Yeah. And I said, well, how about you and Jackie? You keep telling me that you don't like her and you're all over her. He doesn't understand that he can be nice to her without hanging all over her. Michael jumps to conclusions. I really have to stop going over there.
So on October 30th, the night before Halloween, it's something called Mischief Night, where it's like a young person's holiday where they go out and like pull pranks and whatever, you know, I'll get involved in all sorts of hijinks.
I don't know if it's confined to Connecticut or if it's just kind of like a Northeast thing, but yeah, it's just a night where like teenagers, it's the night before Halloween and teenagers just run amok. They stay out late. They rabble and ruse.
Yeah, I asked Ben, I said, did you participate in Mischief Night?
Yeah.
And he said that he had heard of it, but he had never participated. And then I said, I'm sorry, you were a loser.
Nerd alert.
Nerd alert. But yeah, no, I mean, maybe it was, because I have never heard of it. Even, I mean, we live on the East Coast now. I've never heard of it in New York or anything. So anyway, it's October 30th. Martha's out and about. Martha misses her curfew that night, and her mom was not really worried at first. I think it was worth noting that I think she was even grounded during that day, but then she convinced her mom to let her go out. And her mom was like, she's such a good kid. Like, I can't remember what she was grounded for. But anyway, she missed her curfew. Her mom's not really worried at first. But 3:45 rolls around and her mom calls the police, her mom, Dorothy. 4 officers come to their home and they cannot find Martha anywhere. So they put out an APB for Martha and then they leave.
Yeah, so the NAPB is just like an alert to everyone. So the next day, her body was found in her family's backyard by her friend Sheila. The details of Martha's injuries are absolutely horrific. Okay, so trigger warning. I mean,
yeah, it's just
hard to even read, but she had been beaten and stabbed with a broken golf club and had absolutely gruesome injuries. Sheila ran to Martha's house and told Dorothy that Martha had been attacked by dogs or raped, but she needed to call an ambulance immediately and that Dorothy should not go outside no matter what. So she's beaten with this golf club. Yeah. And, you know, she's beaten so terribly, and the golf club actually breaks from the force of this crime, of, you know, hitting Martha. And the sharp side of the golf club is then, like, I think it is, like, used again to stab her in the neck. Yeah. It's horrific. It's so violent. It is, it's beyond comprehension. So around this time, after Martha's murder, a number of strange cars are noted without license plates that begin parking in the Skakel house driveway. And the golf club is later traced back to a set belonging to the Skakel family. From the very beginning, the investigation did not point to an unknown stranger, but it pointed straight toward the Skakel family. At the time, Michael Skakel and his older brother Thomas were both teenagers. Thomas was initially a focus of suspicion because witnesses said Martha had been with him near the Skakel property that night. Michael, who was also 15, lived in the same house and was part of the same social circle. The Skakel home itself was often described as chaotic despite its money. Their mother had died a few years earlier of cancer. Their father was frequently characterized as distant and overwhelmed, and the 7 children were growing up in an environment of wealth, alcohol, and very little supervision.
So it's just awful because this horrific crime happens. And for years, no one was charged. From the outside, it looks like the exact kind of story that people, you know, already suspect can happen around powerful families. You know, a teenage girl is dead. The murder weapon is connected to the rich family across the street. Suspicion sort of circles around young men with the money and the social protection, and the case just completely stalls. Martha's mother, Dorothy, keeps pushing for answers, though. She's not the only one. You know, reporters return to the story, books are written, and the Kennedy connection really keeps the case in the public imagination, even though the suspects were Skakels, not full Kennedys. And I think, like, Michael and Tommy also had interesting accounts of that night. And I think, like, that is why it's so crazy to me that nobody was charged initially, because The murder weapon literally belonged to their household.
It's insane.
And they both had ties to Martha, had strong ties to Martha.
Yeah, and she has diary entries about one of them being quite volatile.
Yes.
So you see how there are people clearly protecting these boys. So decades later, the case came back in a truly surprising way.
I just can't overstate how crazy it is that she is murdered.
Yeah.
And nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
For,
even though
20 years?
They know where the murder weapon came from. They have ample they have ample circumstantial evidence of there's a body, all of the above.
Yeah.
So then, decades later, after there's no charge, the journalist Dominic Dunn in 1996 was given a copy of, quote, a speculative document that came to be known as the Sutton Report. The boy's father, Rushton Skakel, Ethel's brother, secretly hired a detective to investigate and psychologically evaluate Michael and Thomas to figure out if one or both had killed Martha Moxley.
So their dad has suspicions about the two of them.
Yeah, and the investigation apparently took 3 years, and every member of the investigation had to sign an NDA. According to the final report, both boys were reportedly deeply disturbed young men with extreme emotional swings and immature by every measure.
So a separate agency gets hired to build a profile of Martha's killer. And they believe that this person was between the ages of 14 to 18 years old, resided within walking distance of Martha's home, within the same socioeconomic status, and had regular interaction with Martha, had strong sibling rivalry tendencies, had behavioral problems both at school and at home, and was under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the crime. The report concluded that the behaviors were consistent with Michael Skakel. So the crime was in 1975. In 2000, Michael Skakel was arrested. Prosecutors argue that he killed Martha in a jealous rage, possibly because she had shown interest in his older brother Tommy. A major part of the prosecution's case involved alleged statements Michael made a few years after Martha's death while attending the Elon School, a controversial residential school in Maine where he had been sent as a teenager. Asnot talks about some of these statements, which include him confessing to Martha's murder, and then he recants it. So a couple things here. So Rushton sends Michael away to this like kind of reform school.
Yeah.
And it is like a terrible place. And he is beaten a lot and gets into like a lot of fights. And this is where he confesses to the crime, but then he takes it back. I think I struggle a little bit, I think, with some of these, with like some confessions at times, because they can feel forced, or like there is some inconclusive like reports about how this confession came about.
Okay, that's good to know. Because in my head, I'm thinking,
this is not him.
Generally don't confess to things you didn't do, especially murders.
Right. But I think he was in a terrible situation, and I think, I know that he was like regularly like beaten up and stuff at this school. So I think though we should get into a little bit more detail according to Tommy and Michael from that night, and Michael's story changes, which I think leads to him getting charged and leads to all the doubt and suspicion around him. There is a real comfort in finding tools that remove the obstacles between having an idea and actually making it happen. Starting a business should not feel overwhelming with complicated setups and checkout problems. Shopify addresses this by giving entrepreneurs everything they need from day one. Their platform powers millions of businesses, from well-known names to those just getting started. The Shop Pay button, that familiar purple button at checkout, makes paying effortless with saved information and one-tap completion, helping more customers finish their purchase. What also makes Shopify stand out is how it simplifies the entire process. It handles inventory, payments, and analytics all in one place, while offering helpful AI tools, marketing options, and 24/7 support. This allows business owners to spend less time on setup and more time actually growing their brand. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business, so go make it one. Start your free trial at shopify.com/apologist. When your calendar is packed and you do not want to overthink your outfit, having a go-to solution makes all of the difference. Revolve has a carefully curated selection that feels effortless. Everything is styled in a way that makes sense, so you can just shop by vibes. Whether it's date night, a big event, or a last-minute trip. I recently did a huge Revolve haul for my Italy trip, and I got some of the cutest things. I got my favorite beaded Frankie's bikini there, and I also got some heels that were perfect with every single outfit. What makes Revolve stand out is how convenient it is. I'm so glad I did it. I got the item shipped to me so fast. They have inclusive sizing, new arrivals daily, fast shipping, and easy returns. Whether it's a big night out, a wedding, a trip, or you just need something last minute that actually works, Revolve always has it. Go to revolve.com/pop to shop our faves and use code POP for 15% off your first order. Fast shipping, easy returns, it just makes everything easier. That's revolve.com/pop. You can shop our faves and get 15% off your first order. Offer ends July 14th, so don't miss out. So over the years, Michael offered different versions of his activities. So Michael says that he did climb a tree near the Moxley property and he masturbated there on the night of the murder. Prosecutors argue that these statements placed him near the scene of the crime during the relevant time period. Witnesses also testified that Michael made incriminating statements over the years.
Let me just, if you want to be seen as not a suspect, saying that you climbed a tree nearby and masturbated, it doesn't necessarily make you seem like the most, stable person.
Right.
It's like,
yes.
Actually, as a police officer, I don't have any training in investigation, but the person I want to look into, can we bring in that person who said they climbed the tree and masturbated? I mean, it's like, it's so insane.
Well, it's crazy too, because then we get into the case against Tommy Skakel. So Tommy was the last person known to be with Martha before she disappeared.
Yeah.
So Michael has an alibi allegedly for this night where he was
in the tree.
No, that I think the tree happened later on, but when Martha was last seen, he was gone.
Okay.
Like he was at his cousin's house or something like that. Like he was miles away. So back to Tommy. I think Tommy had somewhat of a more of a relationship with Martha than Michael did. I think Michael just had a big crush on her. Mm-hmm. And witnesses reported that Martha and Tommy had been flirting and kissing that evening.
Wow.
And Martha was last seen with Tommy near the Skakel property around 9:30 p.m.
So a jealous rage is completely possible if Michael was obsessed with her.
The other thing that's interesting, though, is that Tommy Skakel had a really bad temper and emotional outburst because he had a traumatic brain injury when he was younger. And so he was also could have had all this rage. This is from just another report that I was listening to about this, where Tommy said that they did actually have an encounter that night, him and Martha, that they laid next to each other and masturbated.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that.
No, I'm just
detail.
I think it's just they both have very murky accounts of that night, and both of them have interest in her, and are reported either in her diary entries or according to friends that they were interested in her, and they admit to having sexual feelings for her. And so anyway, it's just very interesting. And present day, Tommy is estranged from the family.
Okay.
Michael is not. So anyway, we can get back to what unfolds in the prosecution and in the case.
So another shocking detail, 2 years before Michael was arrested in 2000, he had hired a ghostwriter, to work on a book proposal called Dead Man Talking, A Kennedy Cousin Comes Clean. It was explosive, but also painted Michael as a hero. He talks about Martha and his feelings toward her, how he really liked her and wanted her to be his girlfriend. In 2002, Michael Skakel was convicted of Martha Moxley's murder.
Yeah, so 2 years after being arrested, he's convicted.
Ethel Kennedy wrote a lengthy letter to the judge asking for mercy in Michael's sentencing and detailing the difficulties he had experienced in his life. Thank you, Chandler, for bringing details of those. Michael was sentenced to 20 years to life. For Martha's family, it looked like justice had finally arrived almost 27 years after her death.
Also, in this letter, because I listened to it like somebody read Ethel's letter to the judge, she doesn't ever say that he didn't do it. She just says, this is the hard life he's had. Give him some mercy.
What do you think about that, right? I think that those facts are germane, right?
Yeah,
someone who's had a totally nice, happy life and someone who's been the victim of deep abuse themselves. If both of them commit the same crime, I think that we do have that is why people can write letters to judges, so that there can be some sort of nuance in sentencing to account for maybe some the complexity there.
Yeah. I think though it's just there's something about the fact that this literally didn't happen
for so long
that makes me like
and
feel
it's
like this family was only ever concerned about saving their own hide, if you
Yeah.
will. Mm-hmm. And it was never about justice for Martha or, like I just cannot fathom that the pain of Dorothy, of her husband, who I guess like died from a heart attack pretty soon after. He didn't live very much longer after Martha passed away, and Martha's brother. Just can't imagine the pain of that family for so long, having, the memory of their daughter and like just no justice happening.
Yeah.
So this is not the end of the story, though. Michael Skakel maintains his innocence, and his conviction was challenged, over the years. And in 2013, so 11 years after he's convicted, a Connecticut judge granted him a new trial after finding that his trial attorney provided ineffective assistance. The Connecticut Supreme Court later reinstated the conviction, then reversed itself and ordered a brand new trial. Also in 2016, so 3 years later, Bobby Kennedy Jr., so RFK Jr., wrote a book about this whole thing, and it was called Framed: Why Michael Skakel Spent Over a Decade in Prison for a Murder He Didn't Commit. And then in 2020, prosecutors announced that they are not going to retry him, and the murder charge was just completely dropped.
Yep.
So just like all kind of goes away.
As of today, Michael Skakel is not legally convicted of Martha Moxley's murder. In a strong dissent, Justice Carmen E. Espinoza wrote that Michael Skakel's station in life had afforded him chances that other defendants and convicted felons of lesser means would have loved to have had. Unfortunately for them, she wrote, the vast majority do not share the petitioner's financial resources, social standing, ethnicity, or connections to a political dynasty.
I mean, and I do believe the reason why he was able to fight his conviction for so long was because of the resources he had. And his other brother, who I guess is kind of like who he lives with now and who takes care of him, was that person kind of like fighting for him to get released. I just also want to say with this case, like in the case of Mary Jo and with Martha, so much of these horrific crimes then kind of get turned into like, well, was the girl a tease, or what were her intentions that night? In the case of Martha, especially, she was a child. Yeah. I mean, they write about how, like, she'd just gotten her braces off. And in a way that's like, she was really liked by boys. And it's just, it all is like victim blaming.
Well, I mean, you can read it in her journal entry when she says, Michael said, I'm leading Tommy on or something. Yes. That used to be such a thing where it was like, oh, she's leading him on. It's her, like she's frustrating him, and she shouldn't be so nice and so flirty if she's not going to like sexually gratify him. I feel like that used to be an attitude.
I mean, it's still kind of an attitude at times, but way less so now. But I mean, she was literally getting like picked up and forced into the restroom to be like, it's just, it's horrific. And then this horrible crime happens, and there is really no justice.
Yeah. He did serve, it sounds like, 11 years in prison, which is not justice if he did kill her, but it is something.
Yeah, it's something, but I think also just the fact that, like, the case kind of went away.
Right.
It's just like there wasn't another person that they charged, or there, it was like, well, just kind of on a technicality, just gets erased.
Yeah. And I think a big part of closure for families of victims of these kinds of crimes is there being someone held accountable and being called guilty of it. And so I can imagine, it just, her parents are probably no longer alive, but it's...
I think Dorothy passed away. I don't know about her brother.
Yeah, so, if she had been alive, or for any of her surviving family members or relatives, you can imagine that there's just a compounded level of grief where her murder is there's no longer justice for her murder. And her murderer is walking free, not having served that full sentence.
Yes, like it's that chapter is over for like that person's life, but it's never over for the victim's family's lives.
Never.
So the final story we're going to get into in part 3 is that of Pamela Kelley. This is definitely one of the lesser known Kennedy tragedies, but it definitely belongs in this deep dive because it's another serious accident where, another young woman's life was completely changed, and the Kennedys were at fault.
So in August 1973, Pamela Kelley was 18 years old, and she was from Cape Cod. At the time, she was dating David Kennedy, one of Robert and Ethel Kennedy's sons. A group of teenagers was hanging around Nantucket, having just been at the beach. Joseph Kennedy II was driving a 4-seater Jeep with 7 passengers inside, including Pamela, her sister Kim, David Kennedy, and others. Asnot detailed a strong pattern of Joseph's reckless behavior and dangerous driving prior to this date. On the way back from the beach, the Jeep, which had no roof, overturned after Joe was driving in circles, playing the game of ducking under low-hanging tree branches as they drove, until Joe crossed into the other lane of oncoming traffic, swerved, and flipped the Jeep at least twice. I don't know how you flip a car more than once. That's just
I mean, you have to be going
astounding.
so fast.
Yeah.
The crash was severe. Pamela was thrown at least 30 feet from the vehicle and smashed down on a tree stump, suffering a spinal cord injury. She was paralyzed from the chest down, never walking again. One girl also suffered a shattered pelvis and femur, and 2 other girls had broken their necks.
I think what for me is the most galling part of this, it's just that hubristic young male, I'm invincible. I'm going to put my life in danger, and more importantly, everyone else's life in danger who is not consenting to this kind of reckless behavior.
I mean, picture this. It's a 4-seater Jeep. It's a 4-seater Jeep with 7 passengers inside. Yeah. No roof.
Yeah.
Just completely driving
like a maniac.
So Joe Kennedy II was not tested for drugs or alcohol after the crash and was only cited for reckless driving. 6 days after the accident, Joe was in court in front of Judge Anastros, a college classmate of Joe's late uncle, Joseph Kennedy, JFK's older brother. Once again, these names, it's so confusing. But everyone, the judge asked Joe, "Do you believe that prison sentences deter automobile accidents?" And Joe replies, "I don't think so. I think that someone getting seriously hurt would be more of a deterrent." The judge then responded and said, "You have a great father and a great mother. Use your illustrious name as an asset instead of coming into court like this." He gave Joe a $100 fine, temporarily suspended his license, and let him go.
Meanwhile, 2 girls have broken their necks, and Pamela is paralyzed from the neck down. And Pamela eventually, she receives an insurance settlement of $668,000. And this is very notable. She refuses to sue the Kennedy family, despite her parents trying to make her see reason and see that this amount of money is not going to be enough to sustain her for all the care that she will need for the rest of her life, given that she's paralyzed from the neck down. But she believed that the Kennedys were going to do right by her, and there was no need to go after them legally.
Yeah.
The Kennedy family did promise that they would take care of Pamela, which actually makes it even more criminal that they only gave her $50,000 total over the next 47 years. 47 years, people. So Pamela asked Joe for financial assistance numerous times. She asked for help. She asked for her medical needs to be paid for. And he told Pamela, "I'm not made of money." Later, when a reporter asked Pamela for her unfiltered thoughts on Joe Kennedy, so this is obviously years and years later, she says, "I feel like he thinks I'm a piece of trash sitting in a wheelchair." Following this, Joe began paying her $2,000 a month. Pamela said in a People magazine interview, "When I got hurt in 1973, I really believed he would do the right thing. That's what I said to my dad. You don't have to sue them. They'll do the right thing. But they haven't done the right thing, and I'm tired of it." Pamela died in November 2020 at the age of 65 as a result of sepsis.
I mean, one thing there is that, she passes away. She doesn't hear anything. Her family doesn't hear anything from the Kennedys, and the payments stop the following month.
Yeah, wow.
Just very cold. And I think too, Pamela just has a very, very hard life because of these injuries, obviously. And, I think she did, start to give back to the community and was helping other people in that same type of situation who are also paralyzed. But her life was financially not easy, and, she was just treated like trash by the Kennedys, in my opinion.
Yeah. So she spent nearly 50 years living with the consequences of a crash that lasted only a few seconds. Joseph Kennedy, he got a $100 fine. And his license was temporarily suspended, but he went on to be a congressman, a multimillionaire businessman, and just live his life as normal, while Pamela spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair, still asking for help with medical expenses almost half a century later.
I just think, too, that back and forth between him and the judge, where the judge is like, "Well, do you think a prison sentence would, help, help you drive safer in the future?" And it's this totally scripted out back and forth where he says, "No, I actually think, when somebody gets really seriously hurt, that actually would more deter me. That would deter me more from driving recklessly." It's just, it's
such a boys club moment.
Yeah.
Do you think a prison sentence is going to make you drive any safer? It's just, it's abhorrent.
Okay, everyone, that concludes part 3, but we are going to do part 4, where we are going to get into several other women whose lives were completely upended by the Kennedy men. So we're going to talk about Joan Kennedy, we're going to talk about Marilyn Monroe, we're going to talk about Rosemary Kennedy, and many others.
We absolutely will. Thank you guys so much for listening. We adore you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.